have here with us Mr. Olaf van der Veen, CEO and co-founder of Orbisk, and we're going to be talking about climate change and how it's impacting human health. Now, there are three areas usually this covers the impact of climate change. We're talking about heat, we're talking about hunger and health, but today we're going to focus more on food insecurity and waste, food waste management, and to what extent does that actually contribute to fighting climate change. And we have the expert here with us. Olaf, thank you so much for joining us, first of all. And let me start with you, the discussion with how food waste is contributing to climate change, because for a lot of us, I think that when we talk about food waste, we do not understand the bigger impact on the planet Earth. So tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Delighted to do so. So I think all that are in the room now and everyone that will enter soon has just heard Michael Pollan's talk. We have about 40% of everything we produce is being wasted, depending on the place in the world. Meaning that out of every year we waste about half a year of food. And we also know that we're depleting the planet completely. About 70% of the land use that we have is used to grow food. About 24% of all carbon emissions are used to produce food, and we still waste 40% of that. So we're absolutely depleting this planet, meaning that all of the consequences of climate change that you've heard of, like global warming and water shortages and heat and all of the detrimental and sort of accelerating impacts on once more new food growth is also, is all due to food production. And then in addition, food waste creates extra methane and other, greenhouse gases, further multiplying the effect of food being wasted. So, and, quite literally, it's pretty much the dumbest problem we have. There's food, we can eat it, and no one likes to waste food. So that makes my job very hard to do, but also very easy to explain, let's say.
So when I was preparing for this discussion, I looked at Orbisk and I did my research to see what kind of technology do you use when it comes to food waste. So to what extent are you today relying more and more on AI, artificial intelligence? Because AI is disrupting all companies, all business models, all industries. So to what extent are you at Orbisk as well relying on AI in your business model and in fighting climate change?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. So we are, I'm the founder of a tech startup, and we are, since 2018, 19 is when we started, we are an AI first business. So we've never actually worked without AI. So we're completely reliant on AI, you could say. Initially, the first application that we have for AI is to use it for computer vision. So we have we work for restaurants mostly, tracking their food waste, but also retail. And we outfit their waste bins with our technology. So that's a weighing scale underneath the waste bin and a camera on top. And every time something is disposed, we automatically track the food that goes into the waste bin using computer vision. So we can recognize tomatoes and oysters and goat cheese salads and whatever, all of the sandwiches we just ate all together. Currently, that sort of AI boom, if you will, further accelerates how we do our business, because it can also help us generate better advice for our clients using the data that we have, but also by incorporating other data streams such as their procurement and their sales, but also weather, environmental data such as weather or events, allows us to better forecast what their guests will be eating, such that they can really tailor the amount of food they stock up and produce to fit the exact both desires and amounts that their guests will be eating that day. And that was very hard that sort of data is so hyper complex that it was hard to interpret without AI, and that's what is allowed to us today.
And from your experience at Orbisk, what are the challenges other businesses face when it comes to handling food waste?
Well, the most important one, especially in the industry that we service, which is the food service industry, so that's restaurants, hotels, that's conference venues like this, sports halls, is that the food is hyper fresh, or at least that's what you hope it to be. All of us are looking for nice and fresh foods to be served to us, which are the most delicious. Otherwise, we'll go again into what Michael Pollan just said in the other room, hyper processed foods that are just not healthy for us. So we're hoping to get fresh foods out here. But fresh foods have the downside of perishing very rapidly. Most of the fresh foods that get served to us here on these buffets are only able to be served for about 2 hours. So you need to get the volumes exactly right, because anything that you have too much will expire and become food waste within the next 2 hours. So that's the hardest part, and that's basically also why, as a solution, the unfortunate truth is we can't save the food anymore once it's already produced. But by tracking this food waste, and allowing us, based on that data and their procurement and their sales data, to have them see how much your guests will be eating tomorrow, that's actually where we can make a change and allow us to, that allows us to reduce or actually decimate food waste going forward.
And I think I wanted to highlight something here, that we're talking about it from the point of view of a business, a company, a restaurant, but this is actually applies to our homes, in households as well. I mean, I'm guilty. I'm really guilty.
Everyone
when it
is,
comes
so I forgive you for
this.
now.
Yeah, I'm just trying now to actually be, more mindful of waste and food waste, and to what extent I'm actually contributing as well to climate change. So when you're talking just earlier about food waste management, is it something that has to be built in the business model of companies and restaurants right from the beginning, or is it something that can be added at a later stage?
No, actually, it is very much fixable at a later stage by just getting a grip, because
And is it costly as well? Because this is something that, it's all about cost.
I love that question, because initially, of course, we're a business, so we also need to make money, which means that our solution has a price tag to it. But on average, our solution makes our customers like an ROI, a return on investment of 3 to 10x. So actually, it saves them a lot of money, because the reason why it's retrofittable, basically you can see the waste bin as this big gaping black hole in the back of their kitchens, and that's where all the sort of food disappears at the end of service, but no one really knows how much or what sort of stuff goes in there. We all assume we need the same volumes next day. And basically anything that gets measured gets managed. That's what we really see. So the moment you generate data on this, you can also put the chef next to the waste bin all day and he'll learn. Or she, but they've got other stuff to do. They've got their next day to plan. They've got their procurement to do. So the moment we are actually their extra set of eyes, allowing them to see the data that allows them to get their business better running. And any business will optimize. Currently, in fact, at Orbisk, we're even outfitting airplanes with our type of solutions. And it's not like you can, only going forward have these sort of solutions. We can retrofit basically any food system with the type of solution that we have, and make them go better the next day.
Was it difficult to come up with, measuring metrics when it comes to food waste? I mean, how do you measure the impact of food waste, not just in terms of emissions, but in terms of, not only in terms of climate change, but as well on terms in money and the impact of on food insecurity? How do you come up with measuring metrics?
Yeah, so the first one, the boss metric, so to say, is fairly easy. It's kilograms or pounds, whatever geography you're in. So the actual weight of the food. That's the only thing that we need, and then everything, the rest comes on top. But then, because then we can define if it's beef or tomatoes or again, oysters or cheesecake, and we can assume the amount of environmental metrics and also cost metrics that come on top of that. Those are generally assumptions, right? Because for an individual tomato slice, because that's literally what we're measuring, we can hardly sort of really say this tomato was grown there and thus has this exact emission. So now we're working on assumptions, but these assumptions based on sort of like life cycle assessment data are fairly accurate now. And based on these assumptions, you can still act. And from a cost perspective, we can literally just look at their P&Ls. How much did they buy and how much was wasted out of what they bought? And then it's an easy sum to show them, the ROI of what they're doing. And that makes our business model so easy. Because when I started my business, I wanted to build a business that would make my client it would provide economic benefit to my client whilst creating environmental upside, such that I don't need to care what their motivation is. If they want to buy a bigger car or they actually want to be a better person for the environment, I don't need to care because the result's the same. For every euro, dinar, dollar saved, there is less food being wasted. And so the incentives are exactly aligned. And that's, I think, the most important challenge of this bigger topic, heat, hunger, food insecurity. As long as we can make incentives align with the economic incentives, that sort of business model will support itself. And I think that is the most, and most of them will, if you look hard enough. I think that is the main opportunity we have. Just make sure that the environmental incentives are aligned with the economic incentives, and then the rest will follow.
Is this the biggest challenge that you face with your clients? What is the biggest challenge you face with your clients?
No, actually, so that's where we made it easy for ourselves. So for us, the biggest hardship we have is that our clients don't believe they waste as much as they do. Well, like quite literally, they really don't know how much they waste and how much they can thus save. That's what we see most often. There's people don't realize how much they save, and it's a very delicate topic to talk about. So that's the conviction. We're educating the market right now because they're almost without exception, they're surprised with how much they're wasting. I'm not kidding. And then once that we show them, then the ROI is very easy to explain. But for us, it's fairly easy because the same person that needs to buy our technology is the same person that will reap the benefits in terms of ROI. That's not true for some of the business models when it comes to like emissions are harder. They're a couple steps away. So someone needs to act. Say plastics. Plastics. Well, it's an environmental issue, not on emissions, but on other stuff. Obviously, biodiversity and ocean pollution and such. Now, when our clients need to consider that they need to reduce their plastic waste, that probably means that they need to invest in more expensive packaging or other types of non-plastic straws and stuff. So that will cost them money, and it will do the world a benefit, but not them necessarily the next day in their own P&Ls. So that's harder. As a world, we will profit, and the ROI is out of this world. For that individual entrepreneur, they need to spend more money. So it's harder to explain. For us, it's fairly easy because the same person that buys our technology will also save money, and thus, the rest is fairly easy. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes, I know what you mean. It's just the compromise is different, and especially that at the end, managing food waste is going to come up as a positive result on your profit and loss statement as a net profit compared to other strategies that you might actually commit to when it comes to fighting climate change. But let me ask you, Olaf, developed countries maybe suffer more so than developing countries when it comes to climate change and food insecurity, weather, heat, and hunger as well. So to what extent do you think that for developing countries, there should be some kind of organizations and the institutions who actually try to scale AI into food stability and food sufficiency and fighting climate change for them, because the developing countries don't have the financial means. They have other priorities, but at the same time, they are one of the most vulnerable to climate change and its negative impacts.
100%, yeah, and I appreciate that question, because for developing countries, let's also start at the problem definition, because their problem is different. We, as the developed countries, waste a lot of food at the end of the chain. In those restaurants I've just referred to, in your house and mine, and everyone here, I'm afraid. So that's where the problem is. In the developing countries, the food waste problem is more around the supply chain. And the majority of, over 60% of the food for us in developed countries is wasted at the end of the chain, at the restaurant restaurants and at our homes. In the developing countries, over 60% is lost in the whole food chain. Just getting the food to the people where they need to eat it. Yeah, to the destination. The moment it arrives at the destination, they're developing countries. They don't have a lot to spend. They'll eat their food. Believe you me, that's where they do know about the value of food more than we do. So it's a different kind of solution, and it's more about around the traceability of the food across the chain. Now, what I believe in, this is not my business, but what I do believe in our own retail channels, in our own food chain, the power of AI combined with blockchain now makes food a lot easier to trace throughout the chain. A banana from the farm to your plate can be fully traced. I mean, we're working on that. Blockchain promised to be the solution to it. It didn't completely deliver, but AI on top of that, I believe, will. Which is still something we need for the developed countries. But once we start developing that system, that will also reflect on the developing countries, because a lot of that food comes from those countries, actually, if you see what I mean. So I think when we start optimizing that blockchain and the traceability of the food, it will automatically also optimize the situation in the developing countries. Now, I still agree with you. There needs to be probably NGOs and government-organized initiatives to also start actually implementing that in their countries. But unlike our type of technology, this type of technology will actually grow from the fact that we will also do that for the developed countries, if you see what I mean.
So let's talk about partnerships, and this is a word that keeps coming up every time we talk about climate change, because people tend to say or see that this is the government responsibility, when in fact it's a collaboration between the private, the public sector, consumers, corporations, households. Everybody should be on board, otherwise it doesn't work. So to what extent do you think, Olaf, that enough is being done when it comes to having this partnership? And I think these kind of partnerships should start from the government side to get everybody on board.
Oh man, it's the hardest question, because the food system is so complex that it's hard to oversee where you need to actually start. I'm struggling with this problem, and I have for the longest time. But let me try and answer this to the best of my overview of the food system. I think there's a couple positive movements going on. Actually, in consumer sentiment, they are more demanding nowadays when it comes to their food providers, to their or other sort of environmental impact providers, to deliver them a service that is responsible. So the general attitude of the consumer towards who they buy from, this conference center, the hotel they sleep in, the cars that they are transported in, that sentiment drives that the companies that need to deliver from them need to change their behavior too, because the commercial industry in itself doesn't have the incentive to do it alone. So we have that consumer push that is now slowly starting, but really changing. Like, consumer behavior is a long trajectory. 20, 30, 50 years and consumers will be different, but it doesn't go year over year. So in addition to that, governments are in need to set those boundaries more strict. I'm not a policymaker, nor will I ever be, because I don't have the attention and the concentration span for it, to be honest. But if that is the push from the other side that the commercial sector has. So the commercial sector, again, in itself doesn't have the incentive to do so. Having said that, one thing I do believe out of the commercial sector is that they're more flexible than anyone. I'm the commercial sector too, right? I'm also an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs know how to get stuff done. That's just the way it is. That's what we're entrepreneurs for. So the moment you have the consumer push and you have the government push, the commercial sector will find a way how to work with that.
Okay.
They won't do it on their own initiative. That's just the sad truth. But as long as we in this room and everyone that we speak to and the governments will provide that push to the commercial sector, I am very confident that they will be able to deal with it appropriately, because that's what entrepreneurs do. They make do.
I want to engage the audience now. Just by raise of hands, how many of you experience going to a restaurant and over ordering food, or maybe you went to the supermarket to get groceries and you ended up getting more vegetables and fruits and then they rotted in refrigerator and you had to throw all of them. I did this multiple times, so here you go. So this is consumer behavior. I do it all the time. I go to the supermarket, I get things, and I over order, supply my refrigerator, and then something happens. And
especially when you're hungry in the supermarket.
Yes, exactly. My mother tells me never go shopping for food when you're hungry.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I completely agree with that. So this is human behavior. This is very difficult to change. And as you said, it needs, years and maybe decades to change. Would technology play a role in making our behavior better?
Yes, I think so. That is honestly for the technology that we have, this AI leveraged food waste, but not only waste, also food identifier. I'm dreaming of bringing this to consumer kitchens too. And I don't think it's worth our while to actually track your food waste, because you'll just be ashamed. Which, based on that,
yes, I don't want to know the numbers or how much
exactly.
food I'm wasting.
And nor does it help you do better the next day.
No,
the reason why this helps for restaurants is because they run a process. They do the same thing every single day.
Because there's a business model they follow. They will adjust the business model to adjust the food waste.
So I'll tell you what will help you. I will, if I'm able to tell you what you still have today, right now, in your fridge when you're coming home from this conference, and I can tell you what you already have, and I can tell you what delicious food you can make out of what you still have.
I won't go shopping for more.
Sorry?
I won't go shopping for more.
You won't go shopping for more. You'll just need inspiration, and I believe that people are inherently lazy. Businesses are, you are, and I am too.
Yes.
And people are, you need to tap into that inherent laziness, and people are looking for inspiration. And the moment you can, someone told me recently, if you can throw a better party than the alternative, if I can make your life easier. And again, this is incentives aligned, right? Your incentive is just not the ROI. Your incentive is having a easier and better life. So if they can make your life easier and better, and as the result, less food is being wasted, then you'll change. I know that for sure. And I believe the solution is just what I just said. Our type of technology will be able to tell you, whilst you are here, what you still have and is still good. I can mitigate even your own shopping mistakes. And there's probably a whole bunch of other technologies, but sort of giving these nudges for you to be better around your food through the lens of inspiration and not through the lens of shame is I think where we can change customer behavior faster than the behavior curve, the long behavior curve, if you see what I mean.
So now I know what you want from me, Olaf, when it comes to managing food waste. What would you like to see governments do in terms of policies, regulations? What would you like them to do?
So what you can see here and there, in particular geographies, is where there's actually legislation coming up that where companies are just being forced to report on their food waste levels, and then you come into this domain that not only they need to report on this, and can they thus be called out on bad behavior. The moment you force them to need to report, they will also see their own behavior and start acting upon it. Because like I just mentioned to you, we often still need to convince our client how much they're actually wasting. They don't even know. So they're not reporting on this because they're not measuring this. And just by enforcing that they need to report, organization of a particular size, they need to report on their food waste levels. That will open their eyes also not only on their environmental waste, but on their economic waste. And that's sort of, from that point on, you can start also potentially enforcing, but I would rather say, again, not out of shame or force, I would say out of encouragement, encourage them to do better. Because what you see, and that may be a little bit of a side note, 70% of the food going to waste in this type of venue and any hotel that you'll go to, 70% of the food was never even on a plate. We're wasting food that would never even left the kitchen or the buffet. So that means that you can change your food waste behaviors. You can reduce your food waste levels by about 70% in the food services industry without even hurting your guests. Everyone will have eaten enough and will be inspired and have had delicious food, and still you reduce your food waste levels by 70%. Then that is what the government can start incentivizing. How exactly? Again, not a policymaker. It's super hard to make a rule that applies to everyone, but I'm in a number of these advisory boards for indeed governmental institutions, European policymakers in this case, to think along how we can come to a one-size-fits-all rule that will incentivize and sometimes punish bad behavior. But most important, and I'll stop there, is just providing the framework in which, again, these entrepreneurs need to work, because the entrepreneurs, they will get it done.
How do you think this will impact health, human health? You know, we talk about climate change, we talk about heat, hunger, and we talk about them as if this is something external upon us, rather than actually impacting our bodies, our physical health. So from your perspective, how does that impact our physical health as human beings?
Yeah, such an interesting question, and it also brings me back to this developing versus developed world, because the bad news or the bad consequence of the current climate change is that also the developed countries are going to be the first ones to suffer. The developed countries generally have, well, first the capital to be able to take care of themselves.
And resources.
But also they tend to be in relatively safe climates. Look at my own country, the Netherlands. Well, apart from it, if it doesn't flood, we're pretty okay for some time to come. Compare that to, for instance, India, where the temperatures are now rising. They're not only sort of super hot all the time, but they're also unable to grow the type of foods that they used to, and thus, impacting their health. And developing countries will suffer the first. And I find Dubai such an interesting place because you're like somewhere right in the middle. Yeah. There is a hyper modern infrastructure out here, all of these air conditionings, but anyone that's been outside knows that this temperature, it always used to be warm, but it gets crazier every single year. So that's one. The other one is that, and this also will hit the developing countries first, but it will very soon after also start hitting developed countries. If we, especially when we talk about food waste, all of these resources unused, while we deplete the soil, we've heard plenty about depleting soil, also in Michael Pollan's talk and everything else around food, soon no one will be able to grow the kind of foods that we like to eat. Which means that developing country or not, you will be unable to get healthy foods on your plate. And more and more of them are going to be ultra-processed, meaning unhealthy, meaning that we're going to degrade. If we're not acting now, we will be unable to grow the kind of foods that our body need. And then, it doesn't even matter if you're rich or not. Then if it's not available anymore, anyone will be hit, and that's going to deteriorate. The moment we get there, and that's a couple decades out still, but the moment we get there, then we're in a bigger problem than just sort of warmth and all of that sort of stuff. And it worries me, but that's why I'm trying to run a sustainable business.
So I would like to open the stage for audience questions. So any questions that we have from the audience? Yeah, okay. Off too.
We're back.
Okay. Okay, let me give you mine. No.
I'll come to you. Why not?
See.
That one works. Okay, perfect.
Good afternoon. My name is Wasim. I'm from the Urban Propagation as well as Fresh Air. My question is, food waste is both a driver of climate change and a missed opportunity for nutrition. How do you see AI-driven food waste reduction, not only cutting emissions, but also being integrated into public health strategies so that tackling waste becomes a way to fight both hunger and climate change related health risks?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Thanks for that. The unfortunate truth is for the industry that we're servicing, food service, that's where you can't redistribute food. I'd love to, but that's what we're like literally legally unequipped to do. But the problem, especially around hunger, is what I referred to earlier, this blockchain question. It's just about redistributing food in the right way, because if you quite literally look at the food waste problem, we've got too much in some places and too little in others, right? Do you agree? Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I think this blockchain and AI combination that will serve the distribution that will do the traceability that I referred to earlier, will also be able to solve this distribution problem, because the distribution problem is, we know it's there, but again, the food system is so ultra complex that it's very hard to sort of redistribute based on just human sort of brain capacity, and AI will be able to solve for that redistribution problem. The moment we have the right data, then this combination will be able to redistribute the food such that the right amounts will go to the right amount of people. And in that case, also again referring to Michael Pollan in the other room, I believe we have more than enough food to feed the planet. If we actually cut down on meats 2 times over. So I think that will be the solution. So I hope that my company one day in this current solution will be insignificant, because we just redistributed the food right and solving both the climate and the hunger and sort of food insecurity. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, we have another question.
Hi, my name is Imad Ilahi. I run Green Business Associates, which is a consulting firm based in Dubai. Compliance and EPR is one of my forte, which I do. My question is to Olaf. Basically, see, you have AI-based technology which is going to support the food wastage. AI itself is an energy guzzler, so technically speaking, it is itself going to be a problem going down the future, because it's going to consume a lot of energy, and that is one of the primary factors for the climate change, which is one thing. The second thing is there any setup in your system which includes that the portion size served to a customer specifically is controlled based on their habits? And if that is possible, because the major wastage of food happens when people overorder and underconsume, and I've seen it a very big problem in Middle East, that people do a lot of food wastage. Coming from a Muslim family, we are advised to consume only as much as we are supposed to eat, and at least clean up our plates at the end of the day. So which is one of the cultural things that we are supposed to do, but still it does not happen. And I see it, despite this being primarily a Muslim dominated region, the food wastage is extensive. We don't care about how much food we order and what is the amount that we eat. So is there anything based in your platform which ensures that the portion control or the portion size served in the restaurants is reduced, or maybe a smaller size of is there anything which is in your platform, or going forward, will you have any such thing in your platform?
Yeah, thanks for that question. A Muslim family like yours probably doesn't need AI, because indeed you just eat your food. That's good. I appreciate that. I'm gonna, looking at time, I'm afraid I won't be able to answer the AI energy consumption question. We know that our solution is about 1,000 times more climate positive than the AI that we use, but that's not exclusively true. But I'll have to leave it at that for now, sorry. The other one, though, I think is super interesting, because again, we are talking about 70% of food still, even with the overportioning, is being wasted without even ever touching a plate. That is our main focus, because all of that 70, like literally every percent of that can be saved, and your plate still doesn't need to suffer. Doesn't mean that that other 30%, and that's the 30% that you're referring to, is not a problem. This 30% can still be addressed, but that really very much depends on on our clients' behavior towards their guests. We can't, from our solution, force our clients being, you know, the hotel kitchen chef or owner, to do things differently. We do, however, have a very extensive toolkit on how to prevent this kind of problem. And the easiest ones are smaller plates, smaller spoons in your buffets, and that will significantly, like surprisingly much, we've seen this especially in the cruise industry, we're also on cruise ships, we see that this drives down food waste levels tremendously. Still, there's other stuff that you can do, which is plans around rearranging the buffet and your walking lines, which is too complex for me to go into depth right now. But we offer an extensive line of knowledge. We work with over 1,000 restaurants now. We've learned so much about the kind of behavior that you're referring to. That is what we advise upon, and as much as we can.
Yeah.
We can never force, but we can always, you know, leverage that.
I have seconds only. Please, sir.
Okay.
This is the
I
last
have a question. Firstly, what happens to the food that they waste? Just goes in the garbage?
Yeah, fermented or composted. That's
Okay.
hopefully not landfilled.
Okay, because the other thing is, I'm working with the renewable energy cluster in southern Hungary near the Serbian-Romanian border, and have clients who develop small biogas plants. I mean really small, like container sized. You know, we could take all that food and just put it into the biodigester and develop electricity and give homeless places electricity, energy to work. How hard do you think it would be to get something like that together? Like go to the chains of McDonald's and Burger King and say, give me your garbage, let me put it into my biodigester.
Yeah, so it depends on the geography. I've done my studies there. If the geography already has like composting or fermentation in a central location, then it's advisable to not install local composers digesters, because then the central places will already be more effective than a local setup would be. That, however, is often case not the truth. Often case food is still being incinerated or put to landfill. So in geographies, maybe like Hungary, I'm not absolutely sure, where they have landfilling still or incineration of organics, then these on-site composters do make sense. And then the solution that we have, reducing food waste to the bare minimum, but there will always be food waste, and putting that in an incinerator is still a sustainability upside, which also has the upside of indeed providing local gas, and in that case, it would be good.
I'm very sorry, but because I'm running 5 minutes past my time for the panel. Thank you so much, Olaf. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. And please feel free to continue the discussion with Olaf directly. Thanks.